We're going to start off with the Cincinnati Bengals. They are the Super Bowl runners-up. Admittedly, if they'd ever did an America's game for that team, if they'd won that Super Bowl, there would have been a lot of conversation about other quarterbacks throwing interceptions at rather convenient moments during a playoff run and things really falling into place for them. And they are a reason why I love to dismiss teams entirely from being able to make a run and then remember that, there are runs like that happen. And yet their over-under is set at 9.5 right now. And that feels pretty low for a team that have just gone to the Super Bowl.
Yeah, and when you factor in that there's unlikely to be Deshaun Watson for at least one of those games, more and more it's looking likely like he won't be available for the whole season. I don't think Pittsburgh terrifies you if it's them. Every team in the NFL basically has a decent to great unit at this point. They have obviously a great unit on defense, but why would they not feel like they have the best or second best roster in that league? I think the thing that is out there, which is fair. No one loves Lou Anarumo, their defensive coordinator, more than me. People listening to this podcast may remember that during the last Super Bowl week, people realized during the second half of that Chiefs game that the Bengals might go to the Super Bowl and they may have to discuss the defense. And I think I'm the only person who wrote about that defense, and I did so an unnecessary amount of times last season. The thing about that defense that was so special is how they would dramatically change week to week and just deploy one-off game plans. And sometimes it was excellent and sometimes it flamed out. That is really hard to sustain for even a season, which they somehow got away with last year. To sustain it into a second year and anything beyond is really tough. At some point, you just have to default to, do we have the players? Do we have such a talented core that our defense can be sustainable 3-4 years? And you have to have Hall of Famers. You can go through the recent history of the great defenses. Unless you have a Hall of Famer at basically every level, to get 2-3 years out of it, it's very, very tough. And I look at that defense and I really like those guys. And the interior is brilliant. And Trey Hendrickson is unbelievable. And they have maybe the best safety tandem in the league outside of maybe Buffalo. We can talk about Tennessee too. But it just doesn't quite have the on-the-surface talent that you'd expect. And so they kind of have to scheme their way to wins on defense. And I don't know how sustainable that is year over year.
I was looking at one of my least favourite stats, but just to get a bit of an idea of where people felt like they sat on it. It's the old strength of schedule. Now, obviously, it's a nonsense because it's based on the year before, and we know that it's based on the win-loss from the year before, whereas the Steelers, I think most people are expecting to take a step back, maybe even have the first ever losing season under Mike Tomlin. We're all expecting the Browns to likely take a step back, unless you really buy into Jacoby Brissett or think that this whole setup wasn't just designed to make Roger Goodell look like he's riding in on his white horse and slapping on the year suspension anyway. But I'm kind of looking further beyond that. They've got the NFC South, which has a couple of the worst teams in football. Yes, it means they have to go up against the Saints on the road with that defense. That's a tough game, admittedly. And there are a few other difficult ones in there. As the top of their division, they have to play the Chiefs. They've got the AFC East, so they get the Patriots and the Bills. But it doesn't look horrendous. And the offensive side of the ball, in theory, they should just hit the ground running and be absolutely fine. They've even gone... like that offensive line began to figure itself out. The running games there, I can't figure out what it is on that side of the ball that we could be worried about. On the defense, are they any weaker? Are they any, like you're saying about the scheming, that's one thing, but this team looks no worse than it did 12 months ago. And maybe we didn't expect a Super Bowl run 12 months ago, but yeah, it's bizarre.
I think that's the natural progression a lot of people are expecting. The Vegas maybe is buying more into the defensive regression. And they were just so boom or buster on offense, right? That is not a team that's designed brilliantly, play called brilliantly. In fact, they tip plays constantly. Everyone knows where they're going with the ball, particularly in the run game. And then there's the Mars down there somewhere, and they score 7 points, right? How sustainable is that year to year? I think most kind of the national or fan view would be, well, they have this unbelievable quarterback who might genuinely be the best player in the game, right? He's right there. There's so little between those top guys. With Burrow in there, you've got Jamar Chase, you've got Higgins, you've got Boyd. The only piece they've lost is the tight end. I reckon they can just figure that out, and that'll be a Burrow. Will make everyone look good in that role. As you said, they've readdressed the offensive line. It was the big area of concern. That I don't think they've done an unbelievable job overhauling that, but they've changed the profile, as we've discussed before, to kind of make it fit Burrow's style a bit more, which I think can amplify the offense even more. So if I'm them, I don't look at any team in the league and think they can outscore us, right? You have all the pieces you could ever want to post, drop 40 on anyone's head anywhere in the league, and that's a pretty good starting point. And as you mentioned, that opening schedule, why would they not be 4-0 playing Pittsburgh, at Dallas, at Jets, home to Miami? They should be 4-0 going into at Baltimore, which would already...
I'm trying to talk myself into the Cowboys on the road, but they're a team we're going to talk about coming up.
Yeah,
and I think...
don't get me wrong, but do they go in there thinking they're at a disadvantage to the Cowboys?
I get there is that, of course. The argument is, and it comes back to what we were saying last week about the Russell Wilson and the Broncos, is that it's a very strong AFC that's arguably got even stronger, particularly if you look at what they've done in the West with the kind of arms race they've had going on there. They could improve in every area and not make the Super Bowl this year. Like, that is absolutely a possibility. You know, Zach Taylor could suddenly become a genius play caller and not the great mirage. I was trying to think of a much more polite way to say what I wanted to say. And they could still not go to the Super Bowl this year. I don't see the reason to fear for them in the division, in the regular season. I expect double-digit wins. I absolutely expect a postseason appearance. And beyond the fact that I've got this real soft spot for the Ravens this year, I fancy them to win the division as well.
Yeah, I love the Ravens, so I'm heavy on them, like you are. But then it does come back to, I hate boiling everything down to Joe Burrow. I'd love to get into the intricacies of their defense, but really, when you have a special one, you don't miss the playoffs, right? That's just, we've seen that for 25 years now, the new CBA. If he's as good as he is purported to be, and I believe him to be one of the 3 best in the league, those guys don't miss the playoffs. So it's weird to have an over-under total when one of the most famous guys in the sport is the face of the franchise. And as you said, they actually got better at the key area of weakness. So I would expect 10 wins, and all the more so if there's no Watson in the division. That feels like a pre-Watson suspension type value play.